Welcome to lesson 4, landforms in the middle course of the river. So in the last lesson we looked at the upper course and we understood how V-shaped valleys, gorges and waterfalls are formed. This time we're going to work our way down the river and find out what we see in the middle course. Please write down the keywords and the title. And there's just one keyword here that is a sort of an optional keyword, this bizarre word called thalweg. Yes, it's a real word. I'm not actually making it up. You have to trust me on that. Thalweg, which is the current of fastest flowing water on a meander. We actually did this quiz 3 lessons ago, but it contains some important core knowledge that we need to know. So please write the answers to the quiz after pausing the video. Please now check and correct your answers. So if last lesson we looked at the upper course where we find the source of a river, this lesson we're going to now look at the middle course where the river gets wider and deeper. Take a look at this. This shows a satellite image, a series of images that have been compiled and collated together over the course of 28 years. Now see how much the river has changed and how the landscape has changed over the course of that time. It's actually pretty quick, and you can see clearly how the meanders have got bigger and larger, and that's really what we're going to be talking about today, the changes in the middle course and the formation of these giant bends called meanders. If you look really carefully, you'll see how one of them changes. Look at how this changes over time, how it grows and then eventually disappears completely. So let's move on. What we're going to be looking at is how meanders form and how they grow, because these bends in the rivers, they get bendier over time, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at. Before we start, I'm going to tell you a few things about the movement of water in a river. So if you drop a leaf into a river, or you're playing poo sticks and you drop a stick into the river, it kind of looks on the surface like it's flowing smoothly down in one direction. Sometimes, however, the leaf will start to spin as it moves, as the current beneath the surface of the water starts to make it spin. And here's the thing, water does not flow straight down a river at all, okay? It actually does something called a helicoidal flow. Now, a helicoidal flow, that comes from that word helix. If you remember in biology, you learn about DNA being strands of proteins twisted into a helix, like a spring, okay? Water moves in this helix. It spins and it twists. Okay. Now what happens as you approach a meander, the spinning motion forces water to the outside bend, and what you end up with is that the spinning forces its way to the outside bend and creates this really fast current, okay, as it goes on the outside bend. This fast current is called the thalweg. So helicoidal flow is how water moves down a river, and it spins like this. And as the water approaches a meander, a bend, the helicoidal flow forces the water to the outside bend, and this is called the thalweg. So something to bear in mind, you don't need to use this in your explanation of how a meander forms, but it's useful when it's high level stuff. Please pause the video and get your page to look something like this. We've got two diagrams here. We've got a bird's eye view. I want you to imagine you're in a helicopter looking down at the river bend, the meander in the river. And then we've got a cross section. Now here, I want you to imagine that you're standing in the river and the water is flowing towards you and you're looking at the river coming towards you. Please get your page to look like that. Step by step, I'm going to walk you through how the meander is formed. So on the first diagram, I want you to draw this arrow, and this bendy arrow, which shows the flow of the fastest water. Remember my explanation from before, because of helicoidal flow, the thalweg which is the fastest water, flows on the outside bend. Just like a Formula One car going around the hairpin bend at the Monaco Grand Prix. As the Formula One car comes into the bend, it suddenly moves to the outside of the bend and then cuts in at high speed. It's exactly what happens here. So the fastest water is on the outside bend. That's our first feature. This creates the process of lateral erosion. Now, as it erodes laterally, we see the formation of a river cliff, a steep river cliff. And we also have something else that I need to add in there. We also get undercutting. If you remember waterfalls from a few lessons ago, it's the same kind of idea here. The erosion, the force of the water is eroding the base of the bank around here, and you start to get undercutting, and you end up with this steep river cliff. On the inside bend, we now have, I've done it in blue, but you could do it in any color. On the inside bend, you have slow flowing water. So the water on the inside bend is slowest. This causes deposition to happen because the water's got less energy. It starts to deposit material. As a result of that, on the inside bend, we end up with a gently sloping slip-off slope. So try and mark this up with the highlights so you can see the processes and the features. We've got, unlike waterfalls, which was all about erosion, we've now got erosion and deposition. And what happens over time is the meander grows and gets bendier.
So even on a stream this small with a discharge as low as this, you can see the processes of meander formation. So there is our outside bend and here is our inside bend. So as the water flows around the bend, the fastest water flows around the outside bend, causing lateral erosion and undercutting at the bottom there. This forms that steep river cliff. On the inside bend, here the water flows slowest and has less energy, so it starts to deposit material, and we have the formation of a gently sloping slip-off slope. So one more time to recap: the water flows fastest around the outside bend, causing lateral erosion and undercutting the river bank. This forms a steep river cliff. On the inside bend, the water flows slowest and has less energy, so we have deposition, which forms this gently sloping slip-off slope.
Using your diagram and the video, I would like you to explain the formation of a meander. So how is it made? It's an explain question and it's a 4-marker, so we need to do point and develop, and it's kind of triple develop. It needs to be a detailed explanation. The first word we'd like to start with, as always, is firstly. Now here's the thing, these are optional. If you want to use them, you can. If you really want to challenge yourself, you might need to go back. But these are essential. Outside bend, lateral erosion, undercutting, river cliff, inside bend, deposition, and so on. These are essential, really. So pause the video and then see if you can write this out, and we'll check the answers shortly. Answers. So I put it in brackets because of helicoidal flow. This creates the Thalweg, but the important bit, guys, that you need to have is that, look, firstly is good. We've got that there. Firstly, water flows fastest on the outside bend. Here's our first process. Lateral erosion happens, undercutting the bank to form our second feature, if you can consider outside bend a feature, river cliff. Water is slowest on the inside bend, so it deposits. There's that word, deposits, which comes from deposition up top. That creates our slip-off slope. And the important thing is you recognize that this is continually happening. So we're going to say that the process repeats over time. The process repeats. You could even say the meander grows. Give yourself a mark out of 4 and green pen whatever you missed out. Whoa, look at this thing go. Okay, this is the formation of an Oxbow lake. Now look really carefully back to 1980. You'll see that the meander used to be joined to the river channel and eventually it gets completely cut off from the main river. This is this strange shaped Oxbow lake we're going to find out about next. Please pause the video and get your page to look like this. We need 3 boxes. We need to understand the formation of this bizarre shaped lake called an Oxbow lake. So in the first box, the first thing we need to write is that lateral erosion happens, and lateral erosion affects the neck of the meander. In the second box, our diagram needs to show that the neck has got broken. The water has broken through the neck of the meander. And now you can see, I'll just mark it on here, now you can see that this is where the old meander was. It's now starting to get cut off from the main river channel. You don't need to add those lines on there. In the final box, we have deposition on the ends of the old meander, and this forms an Oxbow lake. Eventually this dries out to form a meander scar. So the Oxbow lake dries out to form a meander scar. Right, using your diagrams, I would now like you to explain the formation of this. All we need to do to get this right, this is a 4 marker. Again, we start with a word such as firstly. What's happening first? So firstly, we have of this. Next, the water. After that, we have on the old meander, on the edges of the old meander. I didn't include that in the annotations, but that's probably fine. Then lastly, our 4th point in the 3rd box is that we have this, which dries out to form that. Pause the video, give it a go. Okay, answers. Firstly, lateral erosion of the meander neck. You could have said outside bend. Eventually the water breaks through. Then we get sediment deposited, or we get deposition on the edges of the old meander. So remember, again, we've got process, feature. Then finally, for the 4th mark, the Oxbow lake is formed. Feature. And you know, you could have included there that it dries out to form a meander scar. Give yourself a mark out of 4, green pen, whatever you didn't get right. Okay, your challenge now is to count the Oxbow lakes or meander scars. Pause the video, see how many you get. Right, here goes. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to include the meander scars here. So there's 4. That's just about 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, just about 17. I've got about 17. What did you get? To finish the lesson, please pause the video, have a look carefully at the photos in front of you. I want you to name the features or landforms. Most of them are landforms, apart from A, which is really a process, I suppose. Here are your answers. In the next lesson, lesson 5, we look at the landforms in the lower course as the river finally meets the sea at the mouth.